I adjusted my simple black blazer before ringing the doorbell of my aunt's sprawling mansion. Inside, I could hear the typical chaos of a Morrison family dinner, loud voices competing to be heard over each other, everyone trying to prove they were the most successful, the most important, the most worthy of attention. My name is Alexandra Parker, née Morrison, though my family tends to forget the Parker part, just like they forget most things about me. At 35, I'm the quietest member of a family that measures worth in decibel levels and bank accounts, or at least the bank accounts they know about. Alex. My cousin Marcus threw open the door, already 3 drinks and judging by his flushed face. Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. I stepped into the grand foyer, noting how the crystal chandelier caught the evening light. Aunt Patricia had redecorated again, probably with the money from Uncle George's latest brilliant investment scheme. Sorry I'm late, I said, though no one was really listening. Board meeting ran long. Board meeting. Marcus snorted. At that little consulting firm of yours? How cute. I bit back a smile. If he only knew that my little consulting firm had just orchestrated the largest corporate takeover in recent Wall Street history. But then keeping secrets was what I did best, both professionally and personally. The dining room was a scene of carefully orchestrated chaos. Aunt Patricia had arranged everyone according to her perception of their importance. My cousin Evelyn, who'd just made junior partner at her law firm, sat near the head of the table. Her husband James, a mid-level investment banker who loved to talk about major deals that wouldn't even register as rounding errors in my world, was holding court with Uncle George. Alexandra. My mother's voice carried across the room, sharp with disapproval. You're late, and what are you wearing? I glanced down at my outfit, a perfectly tailored Chanel suit that probably cost more than most of their monthly salaries. But of course she couldn't see the designer label, just like she couldn't see most things about my life. Hello, Mother. I took my assigned seat, near the kitchen door, naturally. How are you? She was already turning away, more interested in Evelyn's story about her latest courtroom victory. Something about a $2 million settlement that had everyone oohing and awing. I suppressed a laugh, thinking about the $4 billion deal I'd closed before lunch. So, Alex, Marcus leaned across the table, wine sloshing dangerously in his glass. Still doing that weird business consulting thing? What do you even do all day? Before I could answer, his wife Victoria chimed in. Oh, leave her alone, Marcus. Not everyone can be as successful as you. Someone has to do the small jobs. Marcus preened at the compliment. He'd recently been promoted to regional sales manager at his father's company, a position that had nothing to do with nepotism, I'm sure. I keep busy, I said mildly, taking a sip of water. How's the Morrison family business doing? The table grew quiet for a moment. Morrison Technologies, the company my grandfather had built from nothing, was the source of most of the family's wealth and all of their pride. Uncle George had taken over as CEO after Grandpa died, though his leadership style could best be described as coasting on past success. We're expanding. Uncle George boomed from the head of the table. Just signed a major deal with overseas investors. Going to take the company global. I nodded, knowing exactly what deal he was talking about. I'd read the terms. They were atrocious, practically giving away controlling interest for a fraction of the company's worth. But then that was why I'd set the whole thing up in the first place. That's wonderful, I murmured. International expansion can be quite challenging. What would you know about it? Evelyn laughed. Your biggest client is probably some local coffee shop. If she only knew that her precious law firm was currently handling paperwork for one of my shell companies. I'd sat in on 3 meetings with her senior partners last week, though they hadn't known who I really was. Nobody ever did. The dinner continued in its usual pattern, everyone taking turns bragging about their achievements while subtly, or not so subtly, putting others down. My mother kept shooting disapproving glances at my empty ring finger. At 35, I was the only single person at the table, another black mark against me in the family ledger. Did you hear about the Watson merger? James was saying, puffing up with self-importance. Biggest deal of the year. My firm handled some of the preliminary paperwork. I nearly choked on my wine. The Watson merger was my deal. Every aspect of it had been orchestrated by my firm, Parker Global Strategy. James's preliminary paperwork was probably making photocopies. Speaking of mergers, Uncle George cut in. We're about to announce something big at Morrison Tech. Can't say too much, but let's just say we're joining forces with some very important people. The Singapore Investment Group? I asked innocently. The color drained from his face. How did you? Oh, I read about it somewhere. I waved vaguely. Business news, you know. It hasn't been announced yet, he said sharply. That information is confidential. I shrugged, turning back to my salad. Let him worry about that for a while. Enough business talk, Aunt Patricia declared. Alexandra, isn't it time you thought about settling down? That nice Anderson boy from church is single again. I'm focusing on my career right now, I said, the same answer I'd been giving for years. What career? Marcus snorted. What do you even do all day? Seriously, I've never understood what a business consultant actually does. The whole table was looking at me now, amused smiles playing on their faces. They'd never bothered to ask about my work before, always assuming it was something small and insignificant. Would you like me to explain it? I asked, setting down my fork. Oh, this should be good, Victoria Stage whispered to Evelyn. I opened my mouth to respond, but just then my phone buzzed. The caller ID made me smile, perfect timing as always. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I need to take this. Really, Alexandra, my mother sighed. It's rude to take calls during dinner. I put the phone on speaker, something I'd never normally do, but tonight was special. Yes, Sarah. My assistant's crisp voice filled the dining room. Ms. Parker, I have the final paperwork for the Morrison family buyout. Shall we proceed with the hostile takeover as planned? The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Uncle George's fork clattered to his plate. What did she just say? He whispered. I smiled, finally ready to drop the mask I'd worn for so long. About that global expansion plan of yours, Uncle George. I began, watching their faces as realization slowly dawned. We need to talk. The chaos that erupted after my assistant's call was exactly what I'd expected from a family that had always valued appearance over substance. This is impossible. Uncle George stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. You can't. You don't have the resources to buy Morrison Technologies? I smiled, pulling out my tablet. Would you like to see the paperwork? Or perhaps the proof of funds? I have it all right here. I don't understand, my mother whispered, her face pale. Your little consulting business. Parker Global Strategy, I corrected her. Currently the largest private equity firm in Manhattan. Though you'd know that if you'd ever bothered to ask what I actually do. Marcus, who'd been loudly mocking my career just minutes ago, looked like he might be sick. But you're just what, cousin? I raised an eyebrow. Just the family nobody? The quiet one? The one who wasn't worth paying attention to? Evelyn, ever the lawyer, was already pulling out her phone. This has to be some kind of joke. I would have heard about this. My firm handles major acquisitions. Oh, they do, I agreed. In fact, your firm has been working on this deal for months. You just didn't know it was mine. Remember Harrison Holdings? That's one of my shell companies. Her mouth fell open. She'd been bragging earlier about landing Harrison Holdings as a client. Sarah, I spoke into my phone, which was still on speaker. Please send over the complete acquisition package. Right away, Ms. Parker. And shall I inform the board members they can proceed with tomorrow's announcement? Yes, thank you. I ended the call and looked around the table. You see, while you've all been busy announcing your major deals and promoting each other at the family company, I've been quietly building something bigger. Something that doesn't need nepotism to succeed. This is absurd, Uncle George sputtered. The Singapore deal was a trap, I finished for him. One you walked right into because you were too arrogant to read the fine print. Those investors work for me. Every terrible deal you've made in the past year has been with one of my companies, carefully positioned to gain controlling interest. James, who'd been boasting about his involvement in the Watson merger, went pale. You're lying. You can't be. The Watson merger? I turned to him. You mean the deal you claimed to work on? Would you like to know what your actual contribution was? You delivered coffee during one meeting. I remember because you got my order wrong. Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers, staining the expensive tablecloth red. Nobody moved to clean it up. But why? My mother finally asked. Why go to all this trouble? If you were so successful, why not just tell us? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell you? When have any of you ever actually listened to me? When have you ever shown interest in anything I've done unless it was to mock it? The silence that followed was deafening. Do you remember Grandpa's funeral? I continued, my voice softer now. Everyone was so concerned about who would inherit his company, who would carry on the Morrison legacy. Not one of you noticed that he'd left me his personal investment portfolio. Not the company that went to Uncle George, obviously, but the seed money that helped me start my own firm. Dad left you money? Uncle George's face darkened. How much? $5 million, I said. A drop in the bucket compared to the company, but he knew what I could do with it. He was the only one who ever really saw me. $5 million. Marcus whispered. And you turned it into a company worth over $12 billion, I finished. Without the Morrison name. Without family connections. Without anyone's help or approval. Aunt Patricia, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly found her voice. But surely you're not really going to take over the company? We're family. Family. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. Was it family when you excluded me from holiday dinners because I was just a consultant? Was it family when you spread rumors about my failed career to everyone in your social circle? Was it family when you told the board members at Morrison Tech not to waste their time meeting with my firm because I was just a little girl playing at business? Her face flushed. She had done exactly that, not knowing she was actually blocking a meeting with one of my shell companies. The takeover will be announced tomorrow morning, I continued. Morrison Technologies will become a subsidiary of Parker Global Strategy. And yes, I'm keeping the Parker name. I built this without the Morrison legacy and I'll continue without it. You can't do this to us, Uncle George pleaded. This company is our life. No, I corrected him. It was Grandpa's life. You just coasted on his success, making worse decisions every year, driving his creation into the ground. Did you really think nobody would notice? That nobody would step in? What are your terms? Evelyn asked, lawyer mode fully engaged. There must be something you want. Pie terms. I smiled. Oh, those were set months ago. The board has already approved the takeover. Your overseas investors, my people, have voting control. The only question is whether you want to do this quietly or make a scene. And what happens to us? Marcus demanded. Our jobs. Our positions. That depends, I said, picking up my phone as it buzzed with another message. How do you feel about actually earning your success for once? The message was from Sarah. All documents signed. Press release scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Congratulations, Miss Parker. I'm restructuring the entire company, I announced. Every position will be evaluated based on merit, not family connections. Those of you who actually have skills beyond your last name are welcome to apply for positions. Those who don't. I shrugged. I hear the job market is quite competitive these days. This is revenge, my mother said quietly. For how we treated you. No, mother. This is business. Revenge would be telling everyone at your country club that their favorite social climber is now working for her unsuccessful daughter. I stood up, gathering my things. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Taking over a family company requires quite a bit of paperwork. Thank you for dinner, Aunt Patricia. The salmon was overcooked, but I suppose that's what happens when you fire your chef for not being prestigious enough. Wait, Uncle George called as I reached the door. What would your grandfather say about this? About you destroying his legacy? I turned back one last time. Funny you should ask. His last words to me were, show them what quiet ambition can do. I'd say I've done exactly that. The next morning, I watched from my corner office as the business news exploded with headlines about the Morrison Technologies takeover. The stock price soared as investors recognized that competent leadership was finally taking over. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members, alternating between threats and pleas, with the occasional attempt at manipulation. I forwarded them all to my legal team. By noon, Uncle George had been escorted from his office, Marcus had been removed from the sales department, and Evelyn had received a letter informing her law firm that their services would no longer be required. My assistant buzzed in. Your mother's in the lobby, Miss Parker. She doesn't have an appointment. I thought for a moment. Send her up. She entered hesitantly, looking small in my massive office with its view of Central Park. "Nice office," she said quietly. "Much bigger than your father's old one." "That's because I earned it," I replied. "What do you want, Mother?" "To understand," she said, sinking into one of my visitor chairs. "How did we not see it? How did we miss who you really were?" "You saw what you wanted to see," I said simply. "The quiet daughter. The one who didn't fight for attention. The one who didn't need to be noticed. And now you own our company." "No," I corrected her. "I own my company. Morrison Technologies is just another acquisition. One that I'll fix, rebuild, and make profitable again, not for the family name but because that's what I do." She nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning in her eyes. "You really don't need us anymore, do you?" "I never did," I said softly. "That was what you never understood. Success doesn't have to be loud. Power doesn't have to be obvious. And family should be about more than just business connections." She stood up, smoothing her dress with shaking hands. Will we still see you at family dinners?" I smiled, but it wasn't entirely unkind. "I don't know, Mother. Will you finally be interested in hearing about what I do all day?" As she left, I turned to look out over the city, my city in many ways. Tomorrow I would begin the work of rebuilding Morrison Technologies, transforming it from a family legacy into a true corporate powerhouse. And if my relatives wanted to be part of it, well, they'd have to learn what I'd known all along. That true success isn't about who you know or what name you carry. It's about what you build when no one's watching. And I'd built something they could never take away, not with their connections, their name, or their belated recognition of my worth. I'd built an empire. Quietly. Patiently. Perfectly. Just like Grandpa taught me.